Fantasy is a staple of Hollywood, but overall it's been flopping recently. And I realized the answer might be an anime, because anime does something completely different when it comes to fantasy. These two approaches to fantasy aren't just different in style, they believe completely different things about what fantasy is for. And that changes everything about how these stories work, from the characters to the magic systems to the emotions they leave you with. Let me show you the difference between the two, what Hollywood can fix to get good again, and end the debate forever of who does fantasy better. And the first thing you need to know is that Hollywood has basically defined modern fantasy as a global blockbuster genre. Even when other industries try to make fantasy work, they're usually just doing some version of what Hollywood already established. So if I want you to understand the difference, we gotta start with a movie that started it all. The Shire is paradise. Rolling green hills, round wood indoors, hobbits eating 7 meals a day. The whole opening of The Fellowship is Peter Jackson lingering on this beautiful place. He wants you to fall in love with it. Then the plot shows up. The chosen ones leave their paradise to protect the paradise from being destroyed by the modern world catching up to it. Now, what's brilliant about it is how efficient it is. The Shire doesn't need political complexity, it doesn't need contradictions, it just exists purely as a thing worth saving. This story, I think, tells you that fantasy is recognition, that you'll just know when you see something worth fighting for. Everything else around it is unnecessary detail, and every Hollywood fantasy that came after Lord of the Rings follows that same blueprint, which brings us to Harry Potter, which takes Hollywood's fantasy formula and cranks it to 11. There's a magical world worth protecting, and it's hidden underneath the boring real world where only special people get to see it. Harry is chosen, Hermione is special, Ron is special. Even when the books pretended to care about merit of the world, the entire premise is that magic is something you're born with. You're either chosen or you're not. Hogwarts isn't earned, you discover it. What is both beautiful and also concerning is how much it frames fantasy as an escape from being normal. The movie tells you the real world is gray and limited, full of cupboards under stairs. The magical world has feasts, flying brooms, meaningful destinies. The message in Hollywood is that fantasy means leaving your ordinary life behind to become someone important. It is the pattern that has defined fantasy, Narnia with its chosen king and queens, the Golden Compass with its prophesized child, Aragon, Percy Jackson, and the entire wave of kid discovers they're secretly the chosen one adaptations. Hollywood greenlit all of them from the 2000s, and they all flopped or coasted on what Harry Potter had already established. The whole genre in Hollywood's hands becomes one shape. Discover magic, get chosen by it, defeat the threat to it, roll credits. The formula is why so many Hollywood fantasy movies hit when they hit. It's clean, it's satisfying, and it gives most of us exactly what we came for. The promise that fantasy is gonna let us escape into something bigger than our daily lives. But this same formula is the reason Hollywood is failing right now. Proven by the most expensive failure of the bunch currently, Rings of Power. Amazon spent $465 million on the first season alone, and they thought they had it in the bag. They bought the rights to the token dependencies, they hired serious actors, they built sets that looked like Peter Jackson's trilogy turned up to maximum spectacle. The intent was real. Hollywood was trying to prove they could still do prestige fantasy, but if they just spent enough money. And then season 2 dropped 60% of its viewership compared to season 1, according to Illuminate's year-end streaming report, and by the time it was airing, the show had become a punchline. The discourse wasn't about the writing or the characters, it was about how a show with infinite money felt so hollow. All those rights and all the production design, the story still defaulted to the same Hollywood formula. Chosen ones, hidden identity, dark lords, spectacle as a substitute for substance. And while Hollywood is busy spending $500 million proving that they can't make fantasy work, something else is going on in the world right now. Anime is making fantasy that Hollywood structurally can't or they don't want to. There are 3 shows in particular that keep getting brought up around this conversation and mean a lot to me, and they're worth talking about one at a time. The first one is Frieren. The premise sounds simple. An elven mage named Frieren spends 10 years on a heroic quest with a party of human adventurers. They defeated the Demon King and the kingdom celebrated them. And the Hollywood version is just that, from start to finish, credits rolling. But Frieren starts there. The quest is already over. Frieren returns to her 1,000-year life. The humans she has traveled and adventured with have grown old and died what felt like minutes to her. The opening of this show is Himmel, the hero of the party, dying of old age while Frieren stands at his funeral. realizing she barely got to know him. There's this one specific scene from the show that I want to talk about. Like, the internet calls it the most quietly devastating minute in modern animation. Frieren breaks down in front of Hilmel's grave, and the scene runs for almost a full minute. 3 nights and days pass while she tries to process the fact she missed everything that she'll never get back. But the beauty and devastation of that moment gets me every time. I'm crying. I'm not crying, you're crying. Hollywood would use that as a throwaway line. The whole show is the kind of thing Hollywood would cut. I think the entire reason Frieren works is because the fantasy is only a mechanism that lets the story exist. Like, you need an immortal protagonist to feel the moral grief of humans whose entire lives passed in a flicker. So this anime is doing something Hollywood can't, using fantasy as a lens, using a magic system to look at something universal, in this case time itself, and how people you love move through it faster than you're ready for. It's not about the magic. The magic is just a tool. So if Frieren is a fantasy for the lens of time, we need to talk about another show, Dungeon Meshi. The setup looks like a joke. A party of adventurers fail to defeat a red dragon. The dragon eats the protagonist's sister. They have no money, no supplies, and so the leader suggests something insane. They'll eat the monsters they kill on the way back down to rescue her. Half of the runtime is people explaining how a slime fits into the ecosystem and how to chop it up and eat it, why mandrakes scream when you pull them. It is a lens for ecology. Every creature has a place in a working system, and every fight becomes a meal, because every creature is a part of the food web. And if it was up to Hollywood, they would compress it into a 2-hour quip action movie about adventurers killing a dragon. The cooking would have been a montage. The monologues about how dungeon works as a natural phenomenon would be lost in the editing room floor. The thing that makes Dungeon Meshi special is exactly what Hollywood would cut. But we need to talk about the most radical of these 3 shows, Hat Atelier. And if you don't know already, the premise is simple. It's about a girl who doesn't come from magic, and she finds out it's not just the chosen ones. You're not born with it. Magic is drawing. Spells are diagrams. You take a pen, you take the special ink, and you draw a sigil in the middle and the signs around it and a ring binding it together, and that's how you cast a spell. You should try to draw this spell. This is the spell that will actually let you click subscribe. The catch is that society has hidden this fact. Witches have made magic look like an inherited gift to keep practice in the hands of a small elite. Coco discovers this by accident. She watches her future mentor cast a spell, realizing magic is something you draw, and tries it herself. She accidentally uses forbidden magic, but she's taken in as an apprentice to help reverse it. The whole show is about apprenticeship and craft. Coco is a kid learning to draw better. Her tests are about figuring out how to use the tool she has when her ink gets washed away, when her shoes lose their magic, when her materials fail her. My favorite chapter, she's stranded on a floating island with ruined supplies. She doesn't have ink, she doesn't have supplies, she doesn't have a pen, and she solves it by remembering her craft that her mother taught her to do. She uses that skill to achieve her goal. And what makes this radical is that the whole story is built around a single thesis, the lens that magic is craft. Power comes from discipline. You study like learning to make comics or play violin or cook. The wall between people who can create and people who can't is an illusion society puts up to keep power concentrated. Hollywood would never do that. What? There is no Hollywood fantasy in the last 20 years that could honestly be described as a story about apprenticeship and patience. Now, that is anime's flagship fantasy in 3 shows. 3 crafts, 3 different lenses, 3 different magic systems, all doing something Hollywood can't or won't. And we'll get to what is better or what is not. But I think something is important is because they really can't do it. So the reason they choose a story about getting there, defending it, and returning home from it, the 4-quadrant blockbuster model means every fantasy needs to pull grandmothers and 7-year-olds on opening weekend. And that math forces every creative decision through the same filter. Will this turn off the 4 quadrants? That filter kills tonal specificity. It kills slowness. It kills weirdness, reflection, craft. A 2-hour Hollywood fantasy film has to invent, explain, and pay off the world in like 100 pages of script. The ecosystem forces shortcuts. The shortcuts are usually the formula, and anime doesn't have that constraint because they have manga. By the time Frieren, Dungeon Meshi, Witch Hat hits the screens, their magic systems, world, fan base have been stress tested by readers across hundreds of chapters. Hollywood is like sprinting and anime is marinating. Like Hollywood forgot to take new IPs, I feel like Dungeon Crawl Brawler or Brandon Sanderson's work. Like, what are you guys doing? Whatever the sex dragon book is, I think that's one. Make that. Like, come on, there are stories out there waiting to be told. But for the point of the video, who does fantasy better, anime or Hollywood? It's kind of complicated to answer. If fantasy is supposed to inspire us, give us awe, remind us that beautiful and terrible things are possible at scale, Hollywood does it incredibly. Their best work is pure spectacle storytelling designed to make us believe in destiny, magic, and the power of a hero quest. But if fantasy is supposed to do that and show us how to live, how to work, how to grow craft over time, anime is unmatched and it will always be. Frieren, Dungeon Meshi, Hat Atelier, they all feel real because they're built on the same daily choices that actually constitute a real life. And honestly, we do need both. As somebody who makes their own comics, grew up on Lord of the Rings, I love Hollywood's portrayal of fantasy. It reminds us that life can be bigger and stranger than we ever imagined. We also need anime because the work of building something stable, a craft, a relationship, a life itself with the magic, the patience, the growth, the daily practice that real skill requires. Fantasy is also about figuring out how to draw a spell. It's about a lens through life. It tells us who we are and what we're doing here, I guess. I don't know. So what I'm saying, anime wins by a mile, okay? Now I make my own manga-inspired graphic novels because that's what I read now. It's what I love. It's what inspires me. Just like everyone around me, we went to the fantasy that pulls us in. The audience for fantasy never disappeared. It went somewhere where fantasy is being treated more than escape, as a lens for things we actually deal with. It's what I'm trying to do with my own comic, Wand for Hire. It's about a freelancing witch and her familiar dealing with odd clients and dealing with herself. And there's a sarcastic black cat who may or may not be a self-insert. Think of it like Uber Eats delivery driver meets the witching world, like if Kiki's delivery service and Brooklyn Nine-Nine had a baby. Funny clients, some actions, just a good time. It's free on Webtoons if you want to read it. Just click that link right there. Or if you want to watch another video, click this one right here. YouTube thinks you'll like it, so click it and see if they're right. If this is your first time watching a video, hey, my name is Elijah Joseph. Nice to meet you. And if you're coming back, well, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it.